Say hello to Oyster Bunnies.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Get ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
Let me think. How do I do this? What button do I press? Do I push this? And can John hear me? John, can you hear me?
I hear you delightfully well, Brad.
I'm having to relearn everything because I don't think I've been here for a few days.
Well, are you a Missouri teacher, Brad? Are you in one of them there 4-day school learning districts?
No, hold on a minute. If I were a Missouri teacher, I would be off right now. Did school end last week for most of the teachers?
Most of them, but there's still some districts that are going. A lot of them ended on Friday, and some are still going this week, Brad.
They got such a tough job. I'm telling you, they working those weekend shifts and those night shifts. And can you imagine how the superintendents are so mean that they make the principals come and teach class on Christmas Day? I imagine that. Well,
but did you also know that you can't smoke your marijuana in the teacher's break room anymore, which I think is very harsh because it's medicine, Brad.
John, it's funny you should bring that up. Do you remember the old days? You're much younger than I am, but it always cracked me up that, if you got caught smoking, quote unquote, in the boys' room, as the song would say, you were like thrown out of school. You were like suspended.
Excommunicated.
Right, suspended for a week. But yet when you walked down the hall, and if the door to the teacher's lounge was left ajar, the smoke would just roll out of the teacher's lounge.
We still had it at Larimore Elementary School. There was still a smoking room, yeah. Boy, how do you know you're a member of Gen X or older when you remember smoking rooms?
Oh, God. Well, remember they used to have, matter of fact, a friend of mine used to call it the smoking aquarium out at the airport. Remember they had those things at the airport?
Yes, I do. And you would walk past, and it was just like a walking cancer living memorial.
Right. And they were all glass. You can see it. It was like washing fish in. He always talked about it. It was like watching fish in an aquarium, except they were humans smoking. So that was the smoking aquarium. Okay, that is John Combest every single day of every single year since 2002 now, something like that.
2001.
2001. Yeah. He puts together a list of all the big events that happened in the state of Missouri. Now, on a day like today, we're picking up on Tuesday. Do you pick up the weekend stuff, or how do you do this? Are you just gonna do what happened yesterday that you're gonna cover, or how does that happen?
Anything from the weekend, so Saturday, Sunday, anything that was on my website Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or today. Yeah, Monday is always the best of what folks who don't pay attention a lot over the weekend might have missed over the weekend.
We start up the show, and John does his top three. We bring in this guy by name of...
I'm Casey Kasem.
And how does he start it off?
Now on with the countdown.
And he starts off with...
In third place...
Let's give credit to a Democrat, Brad. State Senator Tracy McCreary from Olivet, who is a Democrat, pushed through a piece of legislation that her predecessor, a woman named Jill Shoup, had guided through the legislature. And it's on cyberstalking and harassment. And this passed as one of the flurry of bills that went through at the very last minute of the Missouri legislature. Folks have been working on this for a while, working out the particulars of what this task force might look like. But the task force, Brad, for the next 3 years, and it does have a sunset on it at the end of 2026, for the next 3 years, a group of advocates will get together and decide best practices for law enforcement groups, for victims groups, for a lot of women's domestic violence type shelters, places like that, and mental health experts to get together to say, what can the state do to build a better infrastructure or use the infrastructure that exists to help people that are being stalked, that are being harassed? We know a lot of instances of this happening. By the way, this story was brought to us in the Post-Dispatch today by Kurt Erickson, and he gives a horrific case of a man who had stalked a woman, and it's a very sad case, but he had threatened to sexually assault several women. And in short, there would have been some steps if law enforcement groups could have coordinated a little bit better, that the women might have been better protected. But as you know, Brad, this is a story that's important to me. I did write a book about this topic. And it's nice to see a piece of legislation that's not particularly partisan and not particularly ideological gain ground in the legislature.
Interesting. And when does that take effect, or has the governor signed it already?
You know what? The governor has not yet signed the. There's a series of bills he has not yet signed because remember, he is on a trade mission, Brad, to Italy.
You know what, John?
Yeah.
Don't get me going about these people like, especially the local people that go on a trade mission to like Hawaii or something like that. It's like no, that's wrong because they're part of the United States.
Well, it's Italy. It's that restaurant down in Bates County.
Well,
You know
no,
what I mean?
no. The idea being is like, do you really think they're getting business for the state of Missouri? Do you really
I
think
think they do. See, I'm a contrarian on this. I think the populist in me says they don't need to travel, but realistically, like we've seen things where folks have gone abroad, and we could quibble about this, but I do think when Jay Nixon would go abroad and talk to China or some other countries, I think that there was some positive stuff that happened for Missouri farmers and trade.
John, I will backtrack and I will admit you're right because when Fannie Willis took her prosecuting boyfriend and they went down to Aruba or wherever they went, I mean, they were just really working hard on the case against Trump. And they because everyone knows that the Caribbean nations are essentially the birthplace of democratic rule as far as the judiciary, and they probably went to some
there's no banana republics down there.
They probably went to some soothsayer and said, "Oh, Mr. Supreme Court of the world, tell us what we should do." And he says, "Bury that Donald Trump. Make his life miserable." Okay, thank
Very
you.
orange man.
Bury Orange Man. And they came back to the United States. So you know what? You're right. There is important things.
What we found out. So first of all, thank you for the admission that I'm right because it happens once in a while. Also, what came out in the trial, I don't know if you saw this, but that Fannie, aka Fanny, was also the subject of the Billy Ocean song "Caribbean Queen." Now we're sharing the same dream.
John,
And our hearts will beat as one. No more love on the run.
John, how many lyrics do you know of songs? I mean,
Too many,
you always
Brad.
crack me up. You throw these things out, but you know what? You know what I'm really disappointed with you
So
about?
what's that?
You didn't know the lyrics to "That Ain't My Truck" because of the fact that
Yeah, I don't. Well, you know what, though? My friend Kevin Johnson told me to stop listening to country music because it's too white.
Okay.
So I went and bought the Beyonce album, and it sucks. Okay, we're ready for number 2, I think.
Up a notch to number 2.
Maybe a little bit of progress, Brad. Another incremental piece of information coming out as it relates to Coldwater Creek. Now, this is a favorite topic of yours, Brad, because you know more about this than 99% of the population. But the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, still stuck in the House. The Missouri Independent, which is a progressive blog, had a piece up yesterday by a content creator named Allison Kite, who's writing, again, an update on Dawn Chapman and the groups called Just Moms STL. Now, one revelatory piece of information, I guess you could call it, is that Dawn Chapman and company said that Congresswoman Ann Wagner got this group a meeting with Mike Johnson's staff, so the Speaker of the House's staff. The staffer apparently told the Just Moms group, hey, this is on our radar. We're familiar with this. According to Dawn Chapman, she says they're not ignoring it. They know it's there. They know it. There's a tremendous amount of Republican colleagues that want this to happen. So it looks like, Brad, that this slog continues. You do have Republicans and Democrats, including Cori Bush, pushing for this. And, this piece that's in the Independent is pretty much a restating of the activist statements of how unjust this is. That, again, Brad, this is one of your key points, is that of all the things that the government does, for the government to not take care of people who it injured seems pretty preposterous on the surface.
Well, and as I've mentioned before, they keep like hiding the sausage kind of stuff because of the fact that
easy, Brad. This is a family show.
Right. The idea being is that once again, my recent pet peeve is the announcement that came out, I don't know, a couple months ago. We're going to close McDonald Boulevard because the bridge there between Lindbergh and the old McDonnell Douglas headquarters needs repair. No, that's not what's going on. They're digging up all the polluted dirt right there because of the fact that they thought it was all on the south side of McDonald, and I've talked about this for years, the fact that you could still drive by there in McDonald, and I used to be able to, can't do it anymore because it's closed. and see the guys walking around in moon suits. And then they started on the north side of McDonald, where countless people, including myself, used to play baseball on those fields. As a matter of fact, I have friends of mine that worked at the airlines back in the 70s and 80s and 90s who told me that those fields were some of their favorite fields they played corporate softball on. It was like Ozark against TWA and stuff like that. And once again, they don't talk about this. And why are they doing it right there? Because that's Coldwater Creek. That's where the stuff leaked into the creek, right there on the north side of the airport. What you're saying,
Brad, for those who just tuned in live on the air, is that if you play hide the sausage, sometimes you could end up with a little polluted dirt. Isn't that the takeaway, Brad?
The takeaway, isn't that a show on KWMU? I think it is. The takeaway.
Yeah, you know what? It's what they do to taxpayers. Yeah. You might get a scarf out of it if you give them an extra $25.
No,
hey, wear it to the urban soccer game and fit right in. Show them you support St. Louis Public Radio.
Sometimes you say things that are so funny. Maybe they're just funny to me. But one time you said something about the fact that someone the highlight of their life or something to the fact was they got a KWMU tote bag, which I thought was
it's a tote bagger crowd. What's the apex of a public radio life other than having a good tote bag? You can go to the store. You're not going to mess with those plastic bags that are bad for the environment. No, you got a tote bag, Brad.
Okay, now hold on a minute, John. I don't want to destroy your top three, but just remember that point about the plastic bags. We'll come back right after number one.
Okay, let's do it.
Which is now.
The number one.
Hate to end on a sad note here, Brad, with number one, but over the weekend, in fact, when we were on the air on Friday, I got a text from a friend of ours who happens to host a radio show in a different city, and who texted me the news of State Representative Ben Baker and his daughter and his son-in-law. Did you see the story, Brad?
It's absolutely, positively horrific. It's so sad what happened.
It's horrific. And I think most folks listen to this know about this, but there's a gentleman named Ben Baker, who's a state representative from Neosho in the southwest part of the state. And Ben's daughter, who was 21 years old, and her husband, who was 23, were killed in Haiti. They were working as missionaries in Haiti, and they were coming out of, I believe it was a school, wasn't it, Brad? Either a school or a church.
Yeah, but you're putting it nice. They weren't killed. They were murdered.
That's true. They were murdered. And there's apparently been a lot of gang violence. I'm not an expert on Haiti, but apparently there's been a lot of turmoil. I guess there was an April election, and since then there's been rival gangs have been going back and forth or whatever. And it's just horrific. I would just point out, I have a piece up today. I had some pieces up over the weekend. There is a GoFundMe. There are 2 GoFundMes that are legitimate. I have one of them up today. That's run by a gentleman named Dirk Deaton, who's a friend and colleague of Ben Baker's. But it's just a horrific story. A lot of folks nationwide have weighed in. And even though it's a downer, it certainly is the top story over the weekend, Brad.
Yeah, and it's so sad because of the fact that, there's so many things here. They were missionaries. They were down there to help the Haitian people. And if you know the whole crazy story down there, you've got an island. Half the island is the Dominican Republic, which is very prosperous, and then the other half of the island is Haiti, which is like hell. You know what I mean? Like it's just like you wouldn't believe it. I was going to say it's sort of like St. Louis and East St. Louis, but that wouldn't be a good representation. But it's just this crazy stuff that goes on in Haiti, and once again, government number 4,652 collapsed. Now you've got all these rival gangs, and that's what happened. Apparently, it was some kind of a gang war or something like that. And they were originally kidnapped, and then they were shot. And the couple, I think they've been married 6 months or something like that. Very young. I think they're in the early 20s. And one of their assistants as well too. There were 3 people that were killed. Just a terrible, sad story. And once again, one of these things. It's like, okay, why would you go there? Well, they're trying to help people, And once again, how sad is it that, this young couple, obviously very much into their religion and trying to, spread the word of God through their missionary activities and things like that. How sad is it that they get killed by a bunch of, I don't even know, subhuman people? Let's be honest.
They were savage. Is there any other way to say it than savages?
Right. And just, can you imagine? I got 4 kids, okay?
I can't even imagine the horror, Brad.
Right. I hope like heck that, I died long before any of my kids died, because I just don't know if I could handle that, especially in the way they were killed. But, once again, we've got this world, and there's crazy places that you don't want to go, and there's some people that just disregard, the warnings and for a greater good, and you have to give them credit for the fact that they were trying to do something good, and they ended up paying for it with their lives ultimately. I mean, which is sad. I mean, very sad. Okay, now going back to what you were saying, what were we talking about? Remind me.
Plastic bags, and you wanted to put one over your head, you said, and I was trying to talk you out of it.
No.
When you buy things, Brad, you don't read the label that says "keep this off of your head."
Right, which is everywhere now. What's funny is if you get something, a real small thing in a bag that's like maybe 2 inches by 3 inches, it says it's got printed on it, "This can cause suffocation." What if you eat it? You can't stick it over your head unless you're like some guys, some cartoon character with like little tiny head. Okay, remember. You go to the Schnucks or the Deerbergs, wherever you shop, and remember you would always be behind in line, the lady or the guy, or maybe it was a couple, they were in their Birkenstocks, and they brought in their woven bag because
they didn't. I do. It's more sustainable.
Right, and once again, COVID changes everything, because remember, the grocery stores banned those bags because of the fact that they were afraid that, oh, my God, they may be carrying COVID germs in those bags, because you don't know where those bags have been. And I guess my favorite thing was I read 3 or 4 different articles that talked about the fact that and this is sort of like the crazy thing with this video I saw over the weekend, which I'll talk about in a minute, but which is I referred to in the past. The idea being that if you take one plastic bag and you compare it to one of the woven, what do you call it? I mean, you know which ones I'm talking about. Especially the Birkenstock crowd would have the really, like the ones that were made out of hemp or something like that.
Oh yeah, some natural fiber.
Right, some natural fiber. And the guy chronicles how much energy it takes to make that cloth bag.
Absolutely. And we know so much more about that now. It dispels a lot of myths.
Right, as compared to the plastic bag. And what was this some crazy thing? This was actually on NPR. I heard this on NPR. It was some unbelievable number. You would have to go to use that bag, the reusable, the woven bag. What was it like? We talked about this before. 7,000 times before.
Some ridiculous amount.
Before the fact that it was equal to in other words, you'd have to go to the grocery store 7,000 times and use that bag repeatedly 7,000 times before you were able to, equal the amount of energy or the savings that it would be created by one plastic bag. And I'm going like, God, here we go again. So
there's a topic, Brad, that I think that you would know a lot about. I'm stereotyping that you would know a lot about this. But years ago, when mainstream media started covering the fact that I guess a lot of our recyclables, when you throw away or you recycle like a number 5 recyclable plastic, that a lot of it just ends up in the ocean, or there's that countries are battling back and forth about because nobody wants this cheap plastic.
Right.
What's the story with this? I figured you would know about this.
There's no market for it. The problem is it takes so much, because you have to look at the energy it takes just for the fact that if you load the stuff into your car, there's energy you've expended to drive it to the recycling center. Then the recycling center has to sort it out, and then they put it in, they do this and they do that. Now, there are some things that are very well recycled, and aluminum cans. Matter of fact, Anheuser-Busch used to promote all the time, which I never really believed. They promoted that they had the cans that their beer was in the cans were 100% recycled, which is not true, because of the fact that if you got some guy that buries, throws his trash in a hole and buries it with dirt, I mean, those cans aren't recycled. But let's say let's say 95% of the cans are recycled because there's a market for it. I mean, there used to be this guy in Washmo, this guy that I always said was the millionaire next door, who was like, who'd ride his bike around and he'd go to the gas stations all the time and pull out the cans. Now, I recycle aluminum cans. Trust me, unless the aluminum market just spikes, there's not much money to be made. I'll recycle like a big 55-gallon trash bag worth of aluminum cans. I'll maybe get like $3, and it costs me probably $3 in gas to get there. You know what I'm saying?
I used to go to the same one you do, the one and well, I don't think you say the name, but it's a great one, and it's might be near on the way to an amusement place.
Yeah, it's the one down at Scrap Mart, down in Valley Park.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know if you ever said the name. Yeah, I used to go to the one on 141, and then Brad, I did the math in my head of actually, if it takes a few minutes to get down there and I'm spending gas,
right?
It's just this is a exercise of futility.
Now,
so I just recycle them now with Republic Services.
For me, when I drive by on a highway on 44, I drive by that place all the time. So I just get off at 141, go down the highway, dump my stuff, get back on the highway. So it's not like I make a special trip or stuff like that. But once again, yet the things that are worth something, like copper and brass and other things like that, you can make money off that kind of stuff. That's why, remember, that's why, what was the story we had last week where they're taking the stoplights out of Oakland?
Yeah, look at what the price of copper has done, Brad.
Right.
Copper's skyrocketed. And you know what? With the whole electrification, when you look at everything that's happening with electrification of rural areas, you look at China's economy bouncing back. It takes a whole lot of copper to make that stuff. Thankfully, we just have Elon Musk and others have children mining rare precious metals from mines in a very safe and responsible manner to fund our EVs.
Can you imagine how many, if you sent an OSHA inspector over to one of those mines over there, how many violations he'd have in the first 30 minutes that he was there? You know what I'm saying?
Listen, I know all the kids would throw their juice boxes down and have a tantrum, Brad.
Right, juice boxes.
And then the foreman would say, "Get to work."
Right.
We need more cadmium. Right. We need more nickel. This cobalt isn't going to mine itself.
Okay, we have to take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?